Her sister said she was too fat to be chosen by the Alpha King, but he made her his queen. The wind carried a chill through the forests of Ilarion, whispering among the gnarled branches like voices from the past. Moonlight fell in pale shards across the mossy ground, revealing shadows that danced and trembled with every gust. In the village at the edge of these woods, Lyra walked alone, her thoughts heavier than the midnight air. She had always known that her life would be different. Her body was rounder, softer than her sister's, her features considered plain by the village, and her voice quieter, gentler. Her elder sister, Maris, had spent years reminding her of what she could never be. Too clumsy to dance, too slow to ride. Too much, Maris would sneer, tossing her golden hair over her shoulder. The words stung, but they never defined Lyra. She had learned to hide the hurt, to let her laughter echo softly behind closed doors, and to wander the forests where no one could see her tears. Tonight, as silver mist curled over the ground, Lyra felt a restlessness in her chest, a pull she could not name. Perhaps it was the stories she had grown up hearing, the tales of the Alpha King, the mysterious ruler who commanded not only armies but wolves that could run as swiftly as the wind. Some said he was cruel, others whispered that he was cursed, a shadow walking in human form. And yet, in the quiet corners of Lyra's heart, she wondered if he, too, understood what it was like to be shunned, to be judged for what one could not control. The forest was alive with the sounds of night. Owls called from the canopy, the leaves rustled as small creatures scurried through the underbrush, and the distant howl of a wolf made Lyra's heart skip. She paused at the edge of a clearing, where the moon shone brighter than anywhere else, lighting the ground in silver. And then she saw him. He was wounded, lying against a tree, his cloak torn and the faint shimmer of moonlight reflected off his eyes, eyes that were not entirely human. They glimmered golden in the darkness, a wild, untamed light that made her breath catch. His form was strong, his shoulders broad, and his hands, though calloused, held a grace that hinted at power. Even in pain, he commanded attention. Lyra's instincts told her to run, to flee back to the safety of the village, to hide from the stranger. And yet she could not. Something in those golden eyes called to her, a silent plea that she could not ignore. "Please," he whispered, voice low, rough like gravel under a calm stream. "Do not leave me here." Lyra stepped closer, her heart racing. She knelt beside him, feeling the warmth of life still present beneath his wounds. "Who are you?" she asked softly, though a part of her already knew he was no ordinary man. "I am Kale," he said, a shadow of pain crossing his face. "The Alpha King, though perhaps you've only heard the stories." Lyra had indeed heard the stories. How he ruled the northern lands with a strength unmatched, how his enemies feared his name, and how he was said to be cursed, bound to a fate that kept him half in the form of the beast, half in the form of a man. And yet here he was, human and fragile before her. "Let me help you," Lyra said. She tore strips from her shawl, pressing them gently against the cuts on his arms. The contact sent an electric shock through her own fingers, and Kale flinched, but not from pain. He flinched from the recognition of connection, as if he had forgotten what it was to be seen, to be cared for. "You should not stay here," Kale murmured, his voice tight with tension. "Danger follows me. Even the wind may betray you." "I've walked these woods all my life," Lyra replied, determination steadying her voice. "I am not afraid." Kale's gaze lingered on her, intense and searching. "You do not know what you are saying," he said, but his voice was softer now. "You have no idea what darkness surrounds me, what I bring to those near me." "I may not," Lyra admitted, her hands stilling on his wounds. "But I know what it is to be alone, to be ignored, to be told you are not enough. I can face darkness if it means standing beside someone who needs me." There was a long silence. The night seemed to hold its breath. Kale studied her, the golden light in his eyes flickering with emotion he did not speak aloud. For the first time in many years, he felt the pull of something he had thought lost to him forever, trust, perhaps even hope. "Very well," he said at last, a faint shadow of a smile touching his lips. "You may stay for now." The sound of movement in the distance startled them both. Lyra turned, thinking perhaps a predator had approached, but it was nothing, only the wind rustling through the leaves. Still, the reminder that the forest was not entirely safe made her heart pound. Cale coughed, leaning back against the tree. "I must leave before dawn," he said, though his eyes never left her. "If I linger too long, enemies will find us. You cannot follow me further, Lyra." "I will follow you if I must," she said firmly. "You will not face this alone." Cale's expression darkened. He had spent centuries alone, cursed to bear burdens no one else could understand. He had built walls so high around his heart that even the bravest of souls would falter before them. And yet here was a girl, no stranger to solitude herself, standing with courage and conviction that rivaled even the bravest warrior. "Be warned," he said, his voice a low growl now, warning and longing intertwined. "To walk with me is to invite danger. To care for me is to risk everything." "I do not fear," Lyra said, though her pulse raced in both fear and excitement. "I only wish to help you." Cale's golden eyes softened just slightly, and he reached out a hand. Lyra hesitated, then placed hers in his. The warmth was immediate, and the mark of his touch burned faintly on her skin. Strange, intricate patterns appeared in the moonlight, forming a sigil that pulsed with soft energy. She gasped. What is this?" she whispered. "A mark of fate," Cale said quietly. "Something old binding us, though neither of us fully understands it yet." Lyra felt a thrill run through her. It was not fear. It was something deeper, something both terrifying and wonderful. She did not know what this mark meant, or why she had been chosen to bear it, but she felt it in her very bones. She was now connected to this man, this Alpha King, in a way that could not be undone. The forest seemed to shift around them, the shadows stretching longer, the mist curling higher. Cale slowly rose, the weight of the night and his curse pressing down upon him. "I must go," he said, his voice tight again with the burden he always carried. "Remember this night, Lyra. It may be the only time you see me before the world changes everything." "I will not forget," she whispered, her own voice trembling with emotion she could not name. "I will find you again, Cale." He gave her a final look, one full of unspoken words, of longing, warning, and the faintest spark of hope. Then, as silently as he had appeared, he vanished into the forest, leaving only the faint glow of the sigil on Lyra's wrist. Lyra sank to her knees, the cold seeping into her bones, but her heart was ablaze. She did not understand what had just happened, nor did she fully comprehend the bond now linking her to the Alpha King. But she knew this: her life would never be the same again. The village slept unaware of the night's events, the moonlight spilling over empty streets and shuttered windows. Maris would wake tomorrow to tease, to mock, to remind Lyra of what she could never be. Yet tonight, Lyra felt stronger than ever. She had seen a glimpse of something greater than herself, something terrifying and magnificent, and she had not flinched. The forest whispered once more, and in that whisper, Lyra thought she heard Cale's voice carried on the wind. "Wait for me." She held the glow of the sigil in her palm, heart pounding with a strange mixture of fear and anticipation. Something ancient had been awakened tonight, and neither Lyra nor Cale could turn back from the path fate had begun. The moonlight faded slowly as dawn crept near, painting the horizon in shades of rose and gold. Lyra rose, brushing the dew from her skirts, and took one last look at the forest. A part of her ached with longing, a part of her thrilled with hope. She did not know what tomorrow would bring, only that her heart had been marked, her fate entwined with the Alpha King, and a journey had begun that would change everything. And somewhere deep in the northern forests, Cale moved swiftly, shadows clinging to him, thoughts of Lyra burning in his mind. Danger waited for them both, but so did something far more powerful, a bond neither curse nor time could break. The morning sun rose over Illyrian, painting the village rooftops in soft gold and pink. Birds chirped, children played along the cobblestone streets, and the river shimmered under the first light of day. To anyone else, it was a peaceful morning, ordinary and calm. But to Lyra, nothing felt ordinary anymore. The glow of the sigil on her wrist had faded with the dawn, yet its memory lingered, warm and pulsing under her skin. She touched it often, almost unconsciously, remembering Kale's golden eyes, the strength and sorrow hidden in them, and the quiet, dangerous power he carried. Her sister, Maris, entered the room that morning with her usual haughty air. "Still dreaming, I see," she said, glancing at Lyra with a smirk. "The woods will not change you. You will never be chosen, not by anyone important." Lyra bit back a sharp retort. Instead, she let Maris leave, closing the door and letting her own thoughts drift back to the night before. She had glimpsed something incredible, something far beyond the confines of the village and the judgment of her sister. And now, the world was about to change in ways she could not yet imagine. News arrived in the village before the sun reached its highest point. A royal messenger, clad in black and silver, rode through the streets with the Alpha King's banner fluttering behind him. People rushed to catch sight of the messenger, whispering among themselves. "Have you heard?" one villager said. "The Alpha King is seeking a bride. He will choose only the one who proves herself worthy." "Worthy?" another scoffed. "It is the Alpha King. Only beauty and nobility can attract him." Lyra felt her pulse quicken, yet she remained silent, standing apart from the crowd. A strange, unshakable certainty had settled in her chest. She did not know why, but she felt the pull of destiny, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt. When the messenger arrived at her family's home, the villagers pressed closer. Mari stepped forward, excitement glittering in her eyes. "Perhaps this is my chance," she whispered to their mother. "Finally, someone will recognize my worth." Lyra remained at the back, heart pounding, trying to suppress the rising tide of anticipation. The messenger spoke in a commanding voice, addressing the entire village. "The Alpha King, Kale, shall arrive at this village tonight. He has chosen a bride." His gaze scanned the villagers, sharp and discerning like a hawk searching for prey. "Prepare yourselves." Murmurs erupted among the villagers. Some whispered fearfully of the king's rumored cruelty. Others gossiped about who might be chosen. But Lyra only felt one thing: the certainty that Kale's path and hers were connected. That night the sky was painted with stars, and the moon rose heavy and golden, casting silver light over the village. People lined the streets, their excitement and curiosity a tangible force in the air. Lyra stood apart, watching silently, heart beating fast, the memory of the sigil on her wrist sharp in her mind. A horn sounded in the distance, deep and resonant. The villagers fell silent. From the northern road came a figure on horseback, cloaked in black and gold. His presence was magnetic, commanding the attention of every living thing. It was Kale. Lyra felt a sudden, almost dizzying pull in her chest. The Alpha King, the golden-eyed warrior of legend, was riding toward her, and when he dismounted, his eyes found hers immediately. The crowd gasped as he walked among them, his gaze piercing, calm yet full of authority. Murmurs ran through the villagers, questions and disbelief. Who would be chosen? Who could ever match the Alpha King's power? Kale's steps slowed as he approached Lyra. The world seemed to contract around them, and for a moment no one else existed. His eyes scanned her face, then the slight rise and fall of her chest, her hands trembling at her sides, and finally rested on her wrist. "You," he said, voice low, deliberate, echoing with an authority that made hearts pause. "I choose you." A stunned silence fell over the villagers. Some gasped, others whispered, incredulous. Mari's face turned red with fury and embarrassment. "No." "He must be mistaken," she cried. Kale's gaze did not waver. "I have not made a mistake," he said, his voice firm and unwavering. "You are mine to guide and protect. No one else will claim you." Lyra's knees felt weak, yet she straightened herself. Her heart thumped like a drum in her chest, a mixture of awe, fear, and exhilaration. This was real. The Alpha King had chosen her. Kale led Lyra to his carriage, which was unlike anything she had ever seen. Its wheels whispered over the cobblestones, and the panels gleamed under the moonlight. Inside, the air smelled faintly of pine and smoke, carrying a strange comfort despite the chill of the night. "You will not return to the village," Kale said quietly as the carriage began to move. "The world outside these walls cannot protect you, nor can your family." Lyra's mind spun. "But my sister, she is not your guide," Kale interrupted, voice firm but not unkind. "The life you knew has ended. Your path begins now." The carriage fell silent except for the rhythmic sound of wheels and the occasional rustle of the road. Lyra's thoughts raced as she tried to process the sudden turn her life had taken. Fear clashed with excitement, but beneath it all, a strange sense of purpose stirred. She had never felt seen, never felt powerful. Yet in Kale's presence she felt both small and significant at the same time. Kale studied her in silence, his golden eyes flickering with emotion he did not name. For centuries, he had known power and command, but he had not known connection. Not until he met Lyra. Not until he saw someone who met his strength with courage and heart. "You may be wondering why I chose you," Kale said softly, breaking the quiet. "You are not the fairest, nor the richest, nor the most skilled in the ways of the court, but you have something far rarer. You have strength, humility, and the ability to see truth in a world that only celebrates appearances. That is why you are mine." Lyra felt tears prick her eyes, but she did not let them fall. She nodded silently, understanding that nothing would ever be the same. When the carriage arrived at Kale's palace, Lyra was struck by its grandeur and darkness. The gates towered high, wrought iron entwined with patterns of wolves and stars. Torches flickered along the walls, casting dancing shadows that made the palace seem alive. Inside, the throne room stretched vast and empty, save for Kale, standing tall on the dais. His presence dominated the space, yet there was a vulnerability there, too, that no one else could see. "You will stay here," Kale said, gesturing toward a chamber on the far side of the hall. "The court will learn of your presence and some will test you. Do not falter. Remain true to yourself." Lyra stepped into the chamber, her heart hammering. The room smelled of cedar and candle smoke. A soft bed rested in the corner and a window framed the moon and stars. It was her new home, her new life, but she did not feel alone. She felt watched, guided, and protected. That night, as Lyra lay in the bed, she touched the faint memory of the sigil on her wrist. Its glow had faded in the daylight, but the warmth remained. She thought of Kale and wondered what dangers awaited them both. The palace was quiet, yet Lyra sensed something stirring. Shadows moved along the walls, whispers brushed her ears, and a chill ran down her spine. She pressed herself beneath the blankets, heart racing, and waited. A soft knock echoed through the chamber door. Lyra held her breath. "Who is it?" she called. "It is I," came Kale's voice, low and careful. "Do not be afraid, I wish only to speak." Lyra rose and opened the door. Kale stood there, tall and imposing, yet somehow gentle in the moonlight. His golden eyes searched hers, full of questions and emotions he could not yet name. "Tonight the world begins," he said softly. "There are those who will not accept you. There are those who will try to destroy what I have chosen. You must be ready." Lyra's fingers brushed his cloak, feeling the warmth and power that radiated from him. "I am ready," she whispered, though a part of her wondered if she truly was. Kale's gaze softened just slightly, and he reached out a hand, hovering near her cheek. "You are braver than most," he said, "and yet there is more to learn. About me, about yourself, about the bond that now ties us." A sudden movement at the window caught Lyra's eye, a dark, silent figure standing against the moonlight. She blinked, but it was gone. Still, a shiver ran through her. "The world is not yet safe," Kale murmured, his hand now resting near the mark on her wrist. "Enemies wait in shadows, and they know what I have done." Lyra looked down at her wrist. The faint trace of the sigil pulsed under her skin, as though reminding her that her fate and Kale's were now intertwined in ways neither could fully control. Her heart beat fast, a mixture of fear, longing, and determination. She knew this. Nothing would ever be ordinary again. She had been chosen, bound, and set on a path that would test her courage and her heart. And somewhere beyond the palace walls, a pair of eyes watched, silent and calculating, waiting for the right moment to strike. The halls of Kale's palace were vast and cold, their walls lined with tapestries depicting kings and queens long gone. The air carried the scent of burning candles and polished stone, and the echoes of footsteps seemed to follow Lyra wherever she walked. It was a magnificent place, yet it felt alive with secrets, shadows that moved just beyond her vision. Lyra had begun to settle into her new life as the Alpha King's chosen queen, but the transition was far from easy. Every glance from the courtiers carried judgment. Every whisper seemed to question her worth. She could feel their eyes on her, measuring her, testing her. Some were curious, some resentful, and some openly hostile. Mari's words still haunted her, words that had once cut like knives. Now, standing in the grand palace, she realized how sharp those words could be when echoed by a room full of strangers. Yet she remembered Kale's golden eyes, the strength in his presence, and the quiet words that had made her feel seen. That memory became her anchor. Kale rarely spoke about his past, and when he did, his voice carried shadows. One evening, as twilight seeped through the tall windows, Lyra found him in the private library, the air thick with the scent of old parchment and candle smoke. He stood over a large table, studying maps and ancient texts. "You are quiet tonight," Kale said without looking up. "I am learning," Lyra replied softly. "About this palace, about the court, about you." Kale's gaze finally lifted, golden eyes catching hers. "And what have you learned?" "That strength is not always in power," she said. "Sometimes it is in patience, and in surviving when everyone else doubts you." Kale's lips pressed into a line, the faintest smile touching his face. "You understand more than most. But there are things you must know, about me, about the curse I carry, and about the enemies who will try to destroy what I have chosen." Lyra's heart quickened. "What curse?" Kale hesitated, the weight of centuries pressing on him. "Long ago, a sorceress bound me. She feared my line and my power. She cursed me so that I would never find peace, never know love without pain. My strength brings fear, my heart brings suffering, and those I care for, they are always in danger." Lyra reached out, placing her hand lightly on his arm. "Then let me help you," she said, voice firm. "I will not run, I will not be afraid, we can face it together." Kale's eyes softened, and for a fleeting moment the walls around him seemed to falter. "Few have said such things," he murmured. "Fewer have meant them." The moment passed, but something subtle had shifted. Lyra sensed it, the beginning of a bond that could endure danger and darkness alike. Life in the palace grew more complicated with each passing day. Courtiers whispered in hidden corners, some plotting against the Alpha King, others attempting to undermine Lyra. Every meal, every ceremony, every public appearance was a test. Lyra learned to hold herself with quiet dignity, though her heart often raced with fear and doubt. Yet she also learned to trust her instincts. She noticed the courtiers' subtle cues, the fleeting expressions of envy or malice. She discovered that her gentle nature could disarm suspicion, that her courage could inspire loyalty in those few who dared to see the truth in her. Kale watched her with quiet approval, often lingering in the shadows, observing her growth with both pride and caution. He began to speak more openly of his duties, of the alliances and threats that shaped the kingdom. And he began to reveal himself in moments too brief for others to see. The man beneath the Alpha King, haunted yet fiercely protective, capable of tenderness even in a world that demanded ruthlessness. One night, as a silver mist crept across the palace gardens, Lyra wandered alone, thinking about Kale, about the strange mark on her wrist, and about the life she had left behind. The gardens were quiet, but the night was alive with whispers, the rustle of leaves, the soft flow of fountains, the distant call of wolves. A figure stepped from the shadows. Lyra froze, her heart leaping. "You should not be here alone," the figure said softly. Cale emerged from the darkness, golden eyes glinting in the moonlight. He approached slowly, the faint scent of pine and earth surrounding him. "I needed air," Lyra replied, though her voice shook slightly. I think too much sometimes." "Thinking is dangerous," Cale said, a shadow of a smile on his lips. "But you are brave to wander, even in a palace full of whispers and secrets." Lyra looked down at the ground, then back at him. "I feel like I am learning to be someone I never thought I could be. Strong and capable, but I still feel fear." Cale stepped closer, his presence overwhelming yet strangely comforting. "Fear is natural," he said, "but courage is not the absence of fear, it is moving forward despite it. That is why I chose you. You have courage even when you do not believe it." Lyra felt warmth bloom in her chest. She could not explain the pull she felt toward him, the way her heartbeat quickened when he was near. Yet she also understood the danger. Cale's world was full of shadows, and her life had been ordinary until now. The risk of stepping fully into his life terrified her. Weeks passed. Lyra began attending the court, learning protocol, the subtle dances of loyalty and deception. The courtiers tested her relentlessly, but she met each challenge with quiet confidence. She discovered allies among the palace guards, among women who had once been dismissed but now respected her courage. And in private, Cale guided her, teaching her not just about politics but about herself, about the hidden strength she had always possessed. Yet the palace was not without threats. One evening, as she passed through the grand hall, she saw a shadow flicker along the walls, a figure watching her from the balcony. Lyra froze. "Who is there?" she whispered. The figure vanished, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps. Her heart pounded. She ran to Cale's chambers, and he met her at the door, his expression tense. "They are here," he said, voice low. "The enemies who have long sought to challenge my throne. You are tied to me now, Lyra. Danger will not leave you alone." Lyra felt a mixture of fear and resolve. "I will not run," she said firmly. "I am yours to protect, and I will stand beside you." Cale's eyes softened, but the tension remained. "Then you must be ready," he said. "The world we walk is full of shadows, and the darkest ones are not always visible." Days later, a council meeting brought the threats into sharper focus. Courtiers with veiled smiles and subtle hostility spoke of alliances and conspiracies. Lyra watched, learning to read the unspoken words, to sense the intentions hidden behind polite gestures. She understood that the palace was a battlefield not of swords but of loyalty and perception. One courtier, a man named Lord Raven, spoke with a honeyed tone that dripped with condescension. "Your Majesty," he said to Cale, "surely you have chosen wisely. But is the Alpha King truly certain that a girl from a small village can navigate the complexities of the court?" Lyra's hands clenched at her sides, but Cale did not flinch. His gaze met hers, steady and reassuring. "She can," he said, his voice ringing through the hall. "And she will prove it." A murmur spread through the room, some scoffing, some in shock. Lyra felt a strange thrill. The world had tested her, judged her, mocked her, and yet here she stood, chosen by the most powerful man in the land and determined to rise to the challenge. That night, Cale and Lyra stood on the palace balcony, overlooking the northern forests. The moon hung low and golden, reflecting off the rivers like molten silver. "You are changing," Cale said softly. "You are becoming stronger, braver, and more aware of the world around you. Soon you will not just be my queen, you will be my equal in every way." Lyra looked at him, her heart full. "I am learning because you believed in me," she said, "even when I did not believe in myself." Cale reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I have not seen anyone like you in centuries," he said, voice low, heavy with emotion. "You bring light to the shadows I thought were eternal." They stood in silence, the night around them both peaceful and alive with tension, until a sudden flicker of movement caught Lyra's eye. Across the courtyard where the torches flickered, a cloaked figure stood watching. Lyra gasped. "Kale, someone is there." He followed her gaze, his eyes narrowing. "They have found us," he murmured, "and they will not wait." Before Lyra could ask who, the figure vanished into the shadows, leaving a whisper of danger hanging in the night air. Kale's hand found hers, gripping tightly. "You must trust me," he said. "The trials are only beginning. The palace is full of secrets, and the ones who wish us harm will not rest. But together we are stronger than they imagine." Lyra's chest tightened. She felt fear, yes, but also determination. She had faced judgment, loneliness, and doubt. She had survived. And now, bound to Kale, she would face whatever came next. The forest beyond the palace whispered in the night wind, carrying secrets and warnings. Somewhere, dark eyes watched, waiting for the moment to strike. And the sigil on Lyra's wrist pulsed faintly, a reminder that her fate and Kale's was no longer their own. The palace was restless that night. Torches flickered along the high walls, casting long, wavering shadows across the grand halls. The air smelled of pine and smoke, but beneath it lingered something colder, sharper, like a warning carried on the wind. Lyra stood at the balcony, staring into the northern forest where darkness pooled between the trees. The faint glow of the sigil on her wrist pulsed gently, a constant reminder of the bond she shared with Kale, the Alpha King. That bond was no longer just an invisible thread. It was a force, fragile yet powerful, that connected their hearts and destinies. Kale approached quietly, his footsteps nearly silent on the polished stone. He stood beside her, golden eyes scanning the horizon. "They are coming," he said softly, his voice a mixture of warning and determination. Lyra nodded, her fingers brushing against his. "I know," she whispered, "and I am ready." Kale looked at her for a long moment. "You understand what this means, don't you? This is not a battle for you alone. It is for both of us, for the kingdom, for everything we have chosen to protect." Lyra's heart tightened, but she did not flinch. "I understand, and I will not let fear rule me, not now, not ever." Kale's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then we begin." The courtyard below had been cleared. Soldiers in black and silver armor formed lines, holding shields and spears, faces tense with anticipation. Shadows gathered along the edges of the forest, darker than the night itself, and Lyra could feel the energy of old magic stirring. The enemies Kale had warned her about were near, and they had brought something more than blades. A figure stepped forward from the tree line, cloaked in deep violet, eyes glinting like shards of glass. Lyra's heart skipped. The same figure she had glimpsed weeks ago, the emissary of a sorceress who had long sought to undo Kale's lineage, had returned. "You dare challenge me?" Kale's voice rang out deep and commanding. "In my own land," the cloaked figure laughed, a sound like ice cracking. "You think your throne can protect her. You think your power can save anything. The bond you share will destroy you both, Alpha King. Only one will survive the night." Lyra felt the pulse of the sigil on her wrist flare, warm and urgent, as if it were alive and warning her. She met Kale's eyes. "We face this together," she said, voice steady despite the fear curling in her stomach. Kale nodded. "Together." The clash began with a rush of wind and light. Dark energy surged from the cloaked figure, swirling like smoke around the courtyard. Kale moved swiftly, commanding the soldiers with sharp gestures, every movement precise and deadly. Lyra stayed close to him, feeling the weight of her responsibility pressing down. "You must trust yourself," Kale shouted, his golden eyes flashing with power. "You have strength I did not expect." Lyra inhaled deeply and focused on the warmth of the sigil. She could feel the bond it represented, the ancient magic that tied her to Kale. With a deep breath, she stepped forward, extending her hands toward the swirling shadows. Light flared from the sigil, bright and steady, pushing back the darkness with a force that surprised even her. The cloaked figure recoiled. "Impossible," it hissed. She should not have power. Lyra's confidence grew with every heartbeat. Power comes from within, she said aloud, feeling it echo in the air around her. And I will not let you harm him or me. Kale moved beside her, his presence steady and protective, yet he allowed her to lead, to channel the energy that had lain dormant until now. Together they faced the darkness, their bond amplifying the strength of both. The battle raged, shadows twisting and striking with deadly speed. Kale fought with controlled ferocity, moving as much to protect Lyra as to defeat the enemy. Lyra, guided by the sigil and her newfound courage, learned to channel the energy within her, creating walls of light and barriers that repelled the dark magic. Each time the cloaked figure struck, Lyra and Kale countered as one, synchronized not just by strategy but by trust, by understanding, by a connection deeper than words. Their bond, once unseen and tentative, now blazed like a beacon against the night. The enemy faltered, unable to withstand the combined force of Kale's strength and Lyra's courage. Finally, with a burst of radiant light from the sigil, Lyra stepped forward, channeling every ounce of her determination. The cloaked figure screamed, its form unraveling into shadows, scattering like mist in the wind. The courtyard fell silent, broken only by the heavy breathing of soldiers and the crackling of dissipating energy. Lyra's hands trembled, but Kale held her steady. "You did it," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You were incredible." Lyra looked up at him, heart pounding, and saw the golden light in his eyes not as the Alpha King, but as the man who had found trust, hope, and love in her courage. "We did it," she said softly. "Together." The palace slowly returned to calm, but the memory of the battle lingered in every shadowed corner. Kale led Lyra to the balcony once more, the northern forest stretching endlessly beneath the silver moonlight. "You have changed everything," Kale said. "The curse that has haunted me, it feels lighter now, as if your courage and love have pushed some of the darkness away." Lyra's fingers brushed the faint pulse of the sigil. "It feels like the bond is stronger than ever," she admitted. "Like it wants us to face everything together." Kale nodded, reaching out to hold her hand. "I feared I would never know peace," he said, voice low and honest. "I feared that love would only bring destruction, but with you, I feel something I have not felt in centuries. Redemption, hope, and perhaps happiness." Lyra's heart ached with the weight of emotion, but it was a beautiful ache. She had never been chosen before, never truly seen or valued for her strength. And now, standing beside Kale, she understood that their fates were entwined. Not by chance, not by magic alone, but by courage, trust, and the love that had grown in the shadows. The following days were filled with rebuilding and reflection. Lyra learned more about Kale's lineage, the history of the curse, and the sacrifices that had kept the kingdom safe. She began to understand the depth of the responsibility she had accepted, not just as Kale's chosen queen, but as a partner in ruling and protecting Alarion. The palace court, once full of whispers and judgment, began to change. Some courtiers who had doubted her courage now looked to her with respect. Others still resisted, but Lyra had learned to read their intentions, to navigate the delicate balance of power and influence. Kale observed her growth with quiet pride, often saying little but showing everything through his attentive gaze and gentle gestures. Their bond strengthened not just through magic but through shared understanding, shared risk, and the unspoken promises of hearts now bound together. One night, as they stood on the balcony, Kale turned to Lyra. "You have transformed this palace," he said. "Not just the halls, not just the court, but me. You have shown me that I can hope, that I can trust, that I can love without fear." Lyra's hand found his. "You taught me courage," she replied. "To face danger, to face the unknown, and to believe in myself when no one else did." Kale smiled, a warmth that reached deep into his golden eyes. "Then we have both grown," he said. "And together we are stronger than any curse, any shadow, any enemy that may come." The moonlight bathed them in silver, a quiet celebration of their victory, their love, and the bond that would guide them through whatever came next. The forest beyond the palace whispered once more. Shadows shifted, but they no longer held the same threat. The magic of the bond between Lyra and Kale created a shield, a light that pushed back the darkness, steady and unyielding. Lyra pressed her hand to the sigil on her wrist. Its warmth pulsed with steady rhythm, a heartbeat in tune with Kale's, a reminder that they were no longer alone. Whatever trials remained, they would face them together, as equals, as partners, as lovers bound by fate and courage. Kale leaned close, golden eyes glowing in the moonlight. "Whatever comes," he whispered, "we face it together, always." Lyra smiled, a mixture of relief and joy, and placed her hand over his heart. "Always," she echoed. And under the endless sky, with the northern forest stretching like a sea of shadow and silver, the Alpha King and his chosen queen stood united, stronger, braver, and bound by a love that had endured darkness, danger, and doubt. The palace, the kingdom, and their hearts were forever changed.